You're different with her. I looked up from my phone. Jamie was watching me from across the kitchen counter, arms crossed. The kind of look she gives when she's already decided something and just wants to see if I'll catch up. I don't know what you're talking about. You smiled 3 times in the last 20 minutes and she wasn't even in the room. You were just reading her texts. I put the phone face down on the counter. She's my best friend, Jamie. I know she is. There was a pause. The kind that takes up more space than words. That's kind of the problem, isn't it? I didn't answer that. I picked up my coffee, walked to the window, and stared at nothing in particular for a long time. And that was the moment I should have told the truth. But I didn't. I'm Vivian, and this is the story of the one person I promised myself I'd never feel this way about. The one person I swore was safe. The one friendship I told myself was different. Solid, permanent, built out of something sturdier than want. Her name is Katerina. And we promised each other, once, a long time ago, that we would always stay friends. I just didn't expect how complicated that promise was going to become. Katerina and I met 11 years ago in a cramped coffee shop near campus that smelled like burnt espresso and someone's old rain jacket. We were both waiting for a table that never opened up, and she just sat down across from me without asking. Set her laptop on the table like she already lived there, looked up at me once and said, "Is this okay? The line's not moving and I have a deadline." I said yes. She never really left after that. That's how it's always been with us. Katerina occupies space like she belongs in it. She doesn't ask permission for things. She doesn't second guess whether she's wanted. She just shows up, fully, completely with all of herself. And somehow the room always makes room for her. I was 22, and freshly determined to become the version of myself I'd drawn up in a planner. Organized, successful, moving forward in a straight line. I had a life plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. I had tabs in a binder. Katerina had a beat-up backpack, a philosophy thesis that she kept changing the title of, and a habit of staying up until 3 a.m., arguing about things that couldn't be argued to a conclusion. We were nothing alike, and somehow that became the foundation of the best friendship I've ever had. For 4 years in college, we were inseparable in the way that only makes sense when you're that age, when your life is still liquid enough to let someone else's shape pour into yours. We studied together, traveled together during spring breaks, knew each other's food orders and bad habits, and the specific way each of us sounded when we were trying not to cry. Then we graduated, and life did what life does. It spread us out. I moved to Chicago for a job in marketing. She got a fellowship in San Francisco. We did the long-distance friendship thing, calls on Sunday mornings, a visit every few months, the kind of bond that doesn't require daily maintenance because it's built into the structure of who you are. I had a life, a real one. Steady, with good light and an apartment I actually liked, and a routine that felt most of the time like it was enough. And then Katerina called me in March and said, "I'm moving back to the East Coast. I got a position in Boston. That's 4 hours from you by train." I told her that was amazing. I meant it. I had no idea what I was agreeing to. She moved in September, and by October we were back to what we'd always been, except that we were older now, and the spaces between us had been filled in with years of becoming someone. And somehow that made everything feel more precise, more specific, more like something I was going to have to pay attention to whether I wanted to or not. She came to visit me in Chicago for the first time that November. It was a Thursday. I remember that for no reason, except that I remember everything about that weekend. More than I should. More than could be explained by simple friendship. She arrived at my door with 2 coffees, her coat half undone, hair damp from the rain, and said, "You look exactly the same. How do you look exactly the same?" I laughed and let her in. And standing there in my hallway with the door still open behind her, and the smell of November rain following her inside, I thought, just for a second, so fast I barely registered it. I missed her. Not the way you miss someone you've been apart from. A different kind of missing. The kind you feel for someone who is right in front of you. I didn't know what to do with that. So I didn't do anything. I put it away in the same drawer where I keep the thoughts that don't fit yet, and I made us dinner, and we stayed up too late talking, and everything was fine. It was fine. The thing about Katerina is that she listens differently than other people. Most people listen while waiting to talk. They're already composing their next sentence, while you're still in the middle of yours. You can feel it. The slight lean forward, the breath they take before you're done. Katerina doesn't do that. She goes still. Her eyes settle on you in this way that makes you feel like you've become the only thing in the room worth looking at. She doesn't rush to fill silence. She lets what you said exist for a second before she answers. I'd always loved that about her. But somewhere between November and January, I started to notice it differently. Started to feel it differently. The way her attention landed on me, intentional, unhurried, started to do something to my chest that I didn't have a clean word for. It was January when I first noticed that I was editing myself around her. Not in a bad way. Not hiding. The opposite, actually. I was choosing words more carefully, paying attention to what I was saying before I said it, the way you do when you want someone to understand something specific, when you want to be understood correctly. I didn't ask myself why. I should have. She came back in February for a long weekend, and we went to a gallery downtown, a photography exhibition that she'd read about somewhere and wanted to see. We spent 3 hours in there. We talked about the photographs the way we used to talk about everything in college. Both of us pulling at the edges of whatever we thought until we found something true inside it. At some point, standing in front of a black and white print of 2 women sitting at a table near a window, she said, I think what I love about photographs like this is that you can feel the whole relationship in one frame. Not just the moment, the history of the moment. I looked at the photograph. The 2 women weren't touching, weren't even facing each other entirely. But there was something in how their bodies were angled, both leaning slightly toward the same invisible center, that made the relationship unmistakable. Yeah, I said. And I felt something move in my chest. I didn't look at Katerina. I kept looking at the photograph. I thought, this is what it feels like to be moved by art. That's all this is. It wasn't. It was March, a Saturday, mid-afternoon, both of us on my couch with books we weren't really reading, when something happened that I still think about in more detail than I can explain. She fell asleep. Just like that. No announcement, no winding down. She was reading and then she wasn't, her head tilting back against the cushion, book held loosely in one hand. She sleeps quickly, Katerina. Like she decides to sleep the same way she decides to do everything else, without ceremony. I looked at her for a long time. I'm not going to pretend I didn't. I looked at the way her breathing changed, the way the tension she always carries in her shoulders. This particular Katerina tension, tight and held, always slightly ready for whatever's next, disappeared when she was sleeping. She looked younger. She looked like herself without the effort of being herself. I thought, I know her face so well, and then I know it differently now. And then I looked back at my book and read the same sentence 4 times without retaining a single word. Somewhere in April, Jamie said the thing she said. About me being different with Katerina. And I put the phone face down on the counter and walked to the window and tried to make my heart settle into something I could recognize. It didn't. That was the problem. It wasn't that I was upset. It wasn't that I was confused exactly. It was that I felt, in a very specific and terrifying way, like I was standing at the edge of something I'd been approaching for months without looking at it directly. Like if I looked at it directly, it would become real. So I didn't look. I told myself, Katerina is my best friend. This is what closeness feels like. This is just intimacy. Years of knowing someone well enough that they live in your chest a little bit. This is normal. I told myself that for a long time. And for a while, I almost believed it. May was the month I started lying to myself in complete sentences. She called me on a Tuesday night when I was supposed to be finishing a project for work. I picked up after the first ring. And then, after we'd been talking for an hour and a half, I realized I'd forgotten entirely about the project. Not set it aside. Forgotten. Like it had simply stopped existing. I finished it at 1 a.m, half distracted, and the whole time I kept thinking about something she'd said. An offhand comment about a book she was reading. Just 2 sentences, and I was turning them over like I was looking for a secret hidden inside them. That's when I knew something had changed. I just didn't know what to do about it. In June, she came to Chicago for a whole week. 7 days. She stayed in my apartment, in the guest room, with her bags half unpacked in that characteristic Katerina way, where the suitcase is open on the floor, and clothes migrate slowly to the chair by the window. It was the best week I'd had in years. It was also the worst. Not because anything happened. That's what I keep having to explain to myself. Nothing happened. We went to farmers markets and late-night diners and took long walks along the lake while she talked about her research. And I told her about the campaign I was running, and we existed together the way we always had. But I was aware of her in a way I couldn't switch off. The way she moved through my kitchen, opening the right cabinet on the first try because she'd paid attention. The way she always knew when I needed quiet and when I needed noise. The way she said my name, Viv. Just that one syllable. Just Vi. And how it sounded different from how anyone else in the world had ever said it. One night, Thursday, we were sitting on my balcony after dark. Summer in Chicago. The kind of heat that stays in the concrete, and the city below us still moving, still lit up, still carrying on. She had a glass of wine. I had sparkling water because I had an early meeting. And we were just talking, nothing important, nothing weighted. And she said something that made me laugh, actually laugh. And when I looked over at her, she was looking at me with this expression that I didn't know how to interpret. It wasn't a look I had a name for. It was soft and specific, and held for just a second longer than casual. I looked back at the city. My heart was doing something I hadn't given it permission to do. "What?" I said, trying to make my voice sound normal. "Nothing," she said. "You just look happy." "I am happy." "Good." A pause. "You deserve to be." The way she said that. 3 words. "You deserve to be." Said quietly, not for effect. Like something she'd thought before and was finally saying out loud because the moment was right. I didn't respond. I held my glass with both hands and looked at the lake. And I thought, I am in trouble. By July, I had built a whole system for not thinking about it. I got busier. I let my schedule fill up in ways I usually pushed back against. Extra meetings, a weekend work trip, lunch with colleagues I'd been meaning to catch up with for months. I responded to her texts a little slower. I waited 3 or 4 hours instead of immediately. I told myself this was healthy, sustainable. Normal behavior for a busy adult. It wasn't working. Because even with all the distance I manufactured, she was still there. Not in the way that feels like haunting. In the way that feels like something you're trying to return to. Like a frequency that stays in the background of whatever else is playing. In August, she told me she was seeing someone. She said it casually, the way Katerina says most things. Not making a production of it, not testing my reaction. Just offering information the way you hand someone something and assume they'll know what to do with it. Her name's Sophie. We met at a conference in April. It's casual, I think. I'm not sure what it is yet. That's great, I said. Is it? She wasn't asking me to validate it. She was asking herself out loud in my presence. That's something she does. Processes things by speaking them. I don't know, she said. She's nice. She's really nice, actually. I just keep feeling like something's missing and I can't figure out what. I held the phone very still. That happens, I said. Yeah. A pause. You've been weird lately, by the way. I've been busy. You've been busy and weird. Different energy. I'm tired. She didn't push it. She let it go the way she lets most things go. Not because she believes me, but because she respects that I'm not ready. She gives me time. She always gives me time. I've never deserved it more than I did in August. September was the month I stopped pretending it was going to resolve itself on its own. I was in the middle of a work presentation, 15 people in a conference room, me at the front, and I thought about her. Just that. No reason. Completely out of context. I thought about the sound of her laugh in my kitchen on a Thursday morning, and I lost my place in the sentence, and I had to start the slide over. After the meeting, I sat in my office with the door closed, and I let myself think it. All of it. Fully. Without interruption. I let myself think. I have feelings for Katerina. Not just affection, not just closeness. Something that has been building for long enough that I can't pretend I didn't watch it build. Something that gets louder every time we're in the same room and quieter in a way that hurts every time she leaves. Something I do not know what to do with. Because she's my best friend. Because we promised each other, 11 years ago over burnt espresso and rain puddles and a table we hadn't been assigned, that we would always be in each other's lives. And I was terrified that what I was feeling was going to cost me exactly that. But before we continue, if you made it this far, it's because this story hit something you recognize. That feeling you can't quite name but would know anywhere. The one that lives in the space between friendship and something you're not ready to call anything else. So go ahead and hit the like button right now. It really helps me keep bringing stories like this to you. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe now and turn on the bell. That way, YouTube lets you know whenever a new story goes up. Now tell me in the comments, have you ever felt something for someone you promised yourself was safe? Someone who was supposed to be the one person you didn't have to be careful around? What did you do with that? Type it out for me. I read every single one. And tell me, what city are you watching from? I'll leave a heart. Now, let's go back to Vivian and Katerina. October. She came to Chicago for my birthday. 33. Nothing dramatic. I don't make much of birthdays, never have. But she drove in on Friday evening with a bottle of wine I actually like, and a book she'd marked up with annotations that she wanted to talk about, and that was the gift. That's always been the gift with Katerina. Her attention, the specific quality of how she shows up. We ordered food in, ate on the living room floor because neither of us could be bothered to clear the table, and we talked for 4 hours without stopping. That's not unusual for us. The talk between us has always been long and easy and real, the kind you don't have to manage. But I was managing. Underneath the ease of it, I was managing. Measuring. Making sure I laughed at the right moments and not too loud, and that I wasn't looking at her too long, and that nothing showed on my face that I hadn't approved first. It was exhausting. Around midnight, she went quiet. Not an uncomfortable quiet. She gets quiet sometimes when she's thinking. Really thinking, pulling something together. And you just have to wait for what comes out the other side. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure. And I want you to actually answer it, not the answer you think I want." I felt something shift in the air between us. "Okay," I said. She looked at me. "Are you okay?" "Not busy okay. Not fine okay. Actually okay." I didn't answer right away. That pause was a whole conversation. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," I said carefully. "About what?" "Things." She tilted her head. Just slightly. The way she does when she's waiting for me to say the true version of whatever I just said. "About what kinds of things, Viv?" and I don't know why that was the moment. I don't know what made October the month instead of March or June or September. Maybe it was the way she said my name. Maybe it was the fact that she'd driven 4 hours to sit on my floor and eat takeout containers and ask me if I was okay in the specific way that meant she already knew I wasn't. Maybe it was that I was 33 and I was tired. Tired of managing. Tired of the drawer where I put the things that didn't fit yet. "I've been having feelings," I said. "About something, someone, and I don't know what to do with them because they complicate everything." She held very still. "Okay," she said softly. "What kind of feelings?" And here is what I didn't say. Your name. I didn't say her name. I sat there with everything arranged on the edge of my tongue, and I could not make myself push it over. "I don't know how to describe them," I said. "That's the problem. They don't fit into any category I already have." She looked at me for a long time, and something happened in her face. A small shift. The kind you'd miss if you didn't know her well. But I know her as well as I know anyone, and I saw it. She knew. I don't know how. I don't know if I'd been less careful than I thought, or if she'd been watching the same things I'd been trying not to show. But she knew. Her expression changed by about 10%. Just enough to tell me that whatever she was about to say next was considered. "Those are hard ones," she said finally. "Yeah. The ones that don't fit." "Yeah. Do they scare you?" "Yes." She nodded slowly. She reached over and picked up her wine glass, took a small sip, put it down. All of this very deliberate, all of it giving me space. "You know," she said, not looking at me now, looking at the middle distance, "I've been not great either, lately." "What do you mean?" "I mean that Sophie and I ended things 2 weeks ago. And I've been trying to figure out why, and I keep coming back to the same answer, and it scares me too." I waited. "And what's the answer?" I asked. She looked at me then. And the way she looked at me was the same way she looked at me on the balcony in July, that expression I didn't have a name for. Soft and specific. And I understood now, very intentional. "I'll tell you mine if you tell me yours," she said. And she was almost smiling. That specific almost smile that she has when something is serious and tender at the same time. I looked at her. My heart was very loud. "I don't know if I'm ready to say it out loud," I said. "That's okay." She didn't move closer. She didn't push. She just sat there, across from me on my living room floor, with everything between us like a held breath. "I'm not going anywhere." I believed her. That's the thing. I've always believed her about that. But believing someone isn't the same as being ready. And I was not ready. Not yet. "Katerina," I said. "Yeah. I need you to know that you are the most important person in my life." My voice came out steadier than I expected. "Whatever I'm feeling, whatever this is, I am terrified of losing you. That's the thing that keeps stopping me." She was quiet for a moment. "I'm not going anywhere," she said again. "I know. Even if you can't tell me yet. I know." She nodded. She looked at the floor. A long moment passed. "I kissed you," she said quietly. I froze. "What?" "At that party. Senior year. Your roommate's birthday in November. You were half asleep on the couch and everyone else had gone home and I..." She stopped, swallowed. "I kissed you, on your forehead, and you didn't wake up. And I went home and told myself it was nothing, and I never told you. I didn't move." "I never told you," she said again. "Because I thought, she's my best friend. This is just what closeness feels like. This is just intimacy." The exact words. the exact words I had used to myself. "Yeah," I said, very quietly. "I know," she said. We sat with that for a long time. The city was still outside my windows, the kind of late-night quiet that isn't really quiet, just a lower frequency of everything. The takeout containers between us, the wine, the book with her handwriting in the margins. Everything completely ordinary, everything completely different. She stayed until Sunday. On Saturday, we went to the lake. It was October cold, that specific Chicago cold that has a weight to it, and we walked along the path with our hands in our pockets and our shoulders close enough that they brushed sometimes when the path narrowed. We didn't talk about Friday night, not directly, but we also didn't pretend it hadn't happened. That's something I've always admired about Katerina. She doesn't force resolution, but she also doesn't pretend. She exists in the truth of a moment, even when the moment hasn't finished figuring itself out. She bought me coffee from a cart near the water, handed it over without asking how I take it, because she already knows. Has known for 11 years. I held the cup with both hands and looked at the lake. She looked at the lake too. "I'm okay," I said, not in response to anything. Just to say it. "I know," she said. We walked for another 20 minutes without saying much else. On Sunday morning, she made breakfast while I was still in bed. I could hear the sound of her moving through my kitchen, the particular efficiency of her, drawers and cabinets opening and closing in the right order. The smell of coffee, then something toasting. The occasional sound of her humming something under her breath. I lay there and listened and thought, I don't want her to leave. That wasn't a new thought, but it felt clearer than it ever had. She appeared in the doorway with 2 plates. "I found eggs," she said. "There are always eggs." "Good to know." She put the plates on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed. "You okay?" "You keep asking me that. You keep giving me ambiguous answers." I sat up, picked up my coffee, looked at her. She was watching me with that particular Katerina patience. The kind that isn't passive, is an absence of feeling, but is a very deliberate choice to give the other person enough space to find their own words. "I need more time," I said. She nodded. "To figure out what I'm feeling," I said. "Or not, I know what I'm feeling. To figure out what to do about it. If there's something to do about it. If it's even... Viv. Yeah. You don't have to have it figured out. Not for me." I looked at her. "But you need some kind of answer," I said. "Eventually." She considered that honestly, the way she considers everything. "I need you to be honest with me," she said finally. "That's what I need. Not a decision, not a label, just honesty. About what's true for you." "What's true for me?" I repeated. "Yeah." I looked down at my coffee cup. "What's true for me is that I've been in love with you since at least January, and probably longer, and the thought of this conversation breaking something between us is more terrifying than the thought of never saying anything. What's true for me is that I am 33 years old, and the first time I have felt like this, completely, specifically, unmanageably like this, is right now, with you, and I don't know what to do with that information. What's true for me is that you kissed me on my forehead 11 years ago, and I was asleep, and I didn't know, and somehow that detail is the most heartbreaking thing I've heard in years. I didn't say any of that. What I said was, I'm not ready to lose you." "I know," she said softly. "I'm not ready to lose you either." "Then we're in the same place. We're in the same place." She picked up her plate. She ate. I ate. The morning came through the window at that low, golden October angle, and the city was slow on a Sunday, and nothing was resolved. But it wasn't broken. That's what I kept coming back to. It wasn't broken. She left around noon. She stood at the door with her bag on her shoulder and her coat half done up, the same way she'd arrived in November 2 years ago, damp from November rain, like she lived here. Like she always belonged in this doorway. She looked at me for a moment. "I'll call you," she said. "I know you will." She started to turn, then didn't. "For what it's worth," she said, and her voice was quieter now. "I've never felt this way about anyone. In 11 years of knowing you. I just thought you should know that." She looked at me one more time, and then she went. I stood in the doorway until I couldn't hear the elevator anymore. The apartment was very quiet. I walked back inside and sat down on the floor in the exact spot where we'd been the night before, and I held the quiet around me for a long time. There was no resolution in the room. There was no answer, no landing, no clean place to stand. But there was something I hadn't expected. A kind of stillness. Like the moment after you say something true. Even when you haven't said all of it. Even when most of it is still sitting in your chest waiting for its moment. The telling of even a partial truth does something to the body. It eases something. She was 4 hours away on a train. She was the most important person in my life. And somewhere between those two facts was a feeling I didn't have the right words for yet. A feeling I'd been carrying for long enough that it had started to feel like structure, like something load-bearing inside me. I wasn't ready, but I was closer than I'd ever been. And maybe that's where some things begin. Not with certainty. Not with the perfect moment or the perfectly arranged words. Not with knowing exactly what you want to do or how, or whether the person on the other side of it will still be standing there when you get your footing. Maybe some things begin in the middle of October, on a Sunday morning, with scrambled eggs going cold on a nightstand, and the sound of someone you love moving through your kitchen like they've always lived there. Maybe some things begin with the discovery that you've been waiting, not because you don't know what you want, but because you're learning that wanting something doesn't have to terrify you. Not forever. Maybe the feeling isn't something to outrun. Maybe it's something to walk toward. One step at a time. When you're ready. I still have the book she left behind. She did it on purpose. I know she did, because she'd put a sticky note on the inside cover that said, "For when you're ready to talk about it." The page she'd marked was a line I've read probably 20 times now. I won't tell you what it says. But every time I read it, I think, I know. If this story found something in you, if you've ever held a feeling still because the truth of it felt like too much to say out loud, write "wait" in the comments. That's how I'll know you made it to the end with me. And if you want to stay in this world a little longer, click on the video appearing on your screen right now. Take care of yourself. Until the next one.